In 2020, the story of a young British woman named Angel Lynn shocked the entire United Kingdom. She had been stuck in a harmful relationship with a man involved in crime who faced serious legal issues. Whenever Angel tried to leave, the situation worsened. During her last attempt to escape, it turned into a kidnapping and a life-threatening incident. Thankfully, Angel survived, but her life now is very different. Angel Lynn was born in a suburb of Loughborough, Leicestershire in England Midlands. She was the youngest daughter in a family of 6 children. Her parents, Patrick, often called Paddy by friends, and Nikki, were ordinary people. Patrick operated a small retail business, while Nikki dedicated herself to managing the household and caring for their children. Although the Lynn family was not wealthy, their business provided a steady income to meet their basic needs. They lived in a spacious and comfortable home, working hard to ensure their children received a good education. Angel had a strong, loving bond with her family, especially with her mother, Nikki. She confided in her mom about everything, her future plans, dreams, and concerns. From a young age, Angel was very energetic. She excelled in school, participated in sports, and had many friends. Others viewed her as ambitious, principled, someone who stood up for what was right. She aspired to attend college to study law and work in the justice system. Angel was well known for her stunning looks and slender. With her bright blonde hair, deep blue eyes, she always drew attention and brightened up any event. Many people admired her, but she seldom went on dates due to her busy schedule. Angel cherished her independence and was committed to being self-sufficient. While still in high school, she worked part-time as a waitress at a local fast food restaurant. She diligently saved money for college and bought her own clothes, makeup, and personal items. After finishing high school, Angel successfully entered her dream college. She chose to become a crime scene investigator and enrolled in a program to help her reach that goal. She juggled her studies, work, and sports with impressive energy. Everything was going smoothly until she met a young man named Che Boskill, who took everything away from her. Che Boskill was the younger son of his mother. He grew up with his older half-brother. His mother single-handedly raised the boys, as neither of their father was involved in their lives. She worked multiple jobs from early morning to late at night to support them, which meant that money was always tight. Because she was rarely home, she spent little time with the boys, leaving them to take care of themselves in less than ideal living conditions. Che exhibited aggressive behavior from a young age, causing concern among those around him. He frequently had outbursts of anger, got into fights, and faced continuous trouble. As a teenager, he encountered legal issues and was arrested multiple times. Despite this, his mother always intervened to defend him, viewing her younger son as nearly perfect, despite his actions. His older brother also faced legal troubles, but Che ultimately became a more serious offender while still in school. Nevertheless, their mother did not see any issue with their behavior and did not view them as a bad person. At only 15 years old, Che got involved in crime. He began by stealing cars and taking them apart for parts. Soon after, he joined a local gang where he quickly built a reputation, found his role. It's important to mention that Che was following his brother's path. However, his brother was less aggressive and better at managing his anger. Che loved motorcycles and cars, but instead of just driving, he sped down the streets at high speeds. He obtained his driver's license and, for some time, drove cars for his friends in the gang. By the age of 18, he had purchased his own car with money earned from illegal activities. He frequently drove while under the influence of alcohol and banned substance. On one occasion, he caused a serious accident by crashing into a utility pole, which resulted in him being hospitalized. Although he lost his driver's license, he continued to drive stolen cars and even live-streamed his dangerous driving around town. As Che became more entrenched in organized crime, he escalated from minor crimes like petty theft and carjackings to more severe offenses, including robbery and banned substance dealing. He and his associates began to steal luxury cars on demand and targeted affluent individuals. Che took pride in being a bad guy. Despite being arrested multiple times, he consistently managed to evade significant penalties, often receiving only light sentences. Che had a captivating appearance and a charming personality, despite his reckless behavior and self-destructive lifestyle. Even as a teenager, he easily attracted the attention of girls. When his illegal activities started making money, he spent it lavishly to impress those he liked. However, his bad temper and aggressive nature prevented him from maintaining any meaningful relationships. Che was a manipulative bully who wasn't afraid to resort to violence. While he could initially charm a girl, most would leave once they recognized his true nature. Unfortunately, not everyone was fortunate enough to get away. In early 2019, Angel met a man while spending time with mutual friends. They were both the same age and attended the same university, quickly discovering that they had much in common. Their immediate chemistry led to a budding friendship that soon blossomed into a romantic relationship. Within a few weeks, they introduced each other to their families, indicating that they were serious about their commitment. Hattie and Nikki were pleased with their daughter's choice, as her boyfriend came from a good family and was a decent person. Similarly, his parents welcomed Angel warmly. They spent a lot of time at each other's homes. Their friends and family often joked about a possible wedding in the future. Just 6 months into their intense relationship, they unexpectedly broke up for unclear reasons. Her boyfriend initiated the breakup, leaving Angel feeling heartbroken. Shortly after, he began dating someone new, prompting Angel to distance herself from mutual friends to avoid seeing them together. She found herself isolated, without her boyfriend or friends. Though her family supported her, she fell deeper into sadness. Even focusing on her studies and work didn't provide much relief. During a challenging period in her life, Angel met someone who would become very important to her. By chance, she crossed paths with Che. He was immediately taken with her beauty. He approached her, asked why she seemed sad, suggested they take a walk and get coffee. Angel needed someone to confide in, and Che proved to be a surprisingly good listener. They exchanged phone numbers, quickly began talking and meeting regularly. Che made an effort to impress her with his kindness and support. Before long, Angel realized she was developing feelings for him. At that moment, she truly believed she had found someone deserving of her time, effort. Che tried to impress Angel by showering her with expensive gifts. He taking her to trendy clubs, restaurants, and concerts. She wanted to learn more about his job, but he was very good at concealing his illegal activities. One evening, Angel invited him to dinner at her parents' house. What was supposed to be a warm family meal turned into a heated argument due to Che's arrogant behavior, which upset Angel's parents. Afterward, Nikki, Angel's mother, expressed her concerns about Che and urged Angel to end the relationship. To avoid upsetting her parents, Angel told them that she and Che were just friends, promised to spend less time with him. However, Angel and Che continued their secret relationship, never thinking about breaking up. Che made reservations at fancy hotels for their romantic evenings together. Angel felt she was with a good man, she had fallen in love with him. Che was still in frequent contact with his girlfriend. They called each other many times a day and sent constant texts. He often inquired about her whereabouts, activities, companions. Trusting him, Angel shared everything, believing this was his way of showing he cared. Unfortunately, this was actually the start of his controlling and manipulative behavior. In just a few months, Che learned everything about Angel, her whereabouts, her friends, her work and school schedules. He earned her trust and started to distance her from friends he didn't like. He pressured Angel to lie to her parents, creating a rift between her and her family. By August 2019, his control grew stronger. He dictated her clothing choices, restricted her conversations, even banned her from wearing makeup. Che regularly checked her phone, deleting contacts he disapproved of. He constantly monitored her, questioning her about unplanned outings and showing up if she was out longer than usual. The situation escalated to the point where Angel couldn't greet a male acquaintance without provoking a fierce argument. Her parents started to notice significant changes in her behavior. Once lively, cheerful, Angel became pale and withdrawn. She stopped wearing makeup, started dressing in baggy clothes, and seemed constantly anxious. She became secretive, always clutching her phone and hurrying away to be alone whenever it rang. Her conversations with her mother and sisters dwindled, leading them to become suspicious. When anyone asked how she was doing, she insisted everything was fine, but her reassurances sounded less convincing each time. As a result, the distance grew between Angel and her family. Che took control of her life, turning her from a vibrant young woman into someone isolated and invisible, who believed her only worth was to him. Che began to control every part of Angel's life, even trying to persuade her to quit school and work, promising to handle everything for her. Despite this, Angel was determined to pursue her dreams. Che's control grew stronger. He accessed her social media accounts, installed a tracking app on her phone. He monitored her every move and conversation. He could appear anywhere at any time, which made Angel feel constantly anxious, on edge. Under his pressure, Angel got a tattoo of his name on her arm, as if he had branded her as his own. Che treated her like property. He would call her multiple times a day, even at night, insisting that she turn on her camera so he could see where she was and who was with her. Angel reached her breaking point, tried to end the relationship several times, but Che refused to let her go. What started as a romantic relationship turned into pure manipulation. Che effectively stalked her, controlling her every action, all under the guise of love and concern. In January 2020, Che and several friends were arrested for trying to steal a car, received 4-month prison sentences. For Angel, this seemed like an opportunity to break free from a toxic relationship that was going nowhere. However, she was wrong. Every day, Che was allowed to make a phone call, and he used it each evening to contact Angel. His friends watched her and reported back to him. Angel felt constantly monitored and powerless to escape her fear. At the end of May, Che was released from prison. He immediately went to Angel's house and caused a scene. When Angel tried to break up with him again, he demanded that she pay him back about £80, which he claimed to have spent on her before he was imprisoned. Angel quickly gave him all the money she had saved, but the harassment worsened. A week later, Che physically attacked Angel for the first time. Just a week after that, he assaulted her again, and a bystander, concerned for Angel's safety, called the police. However, Angel chose not to press charges, so Che faced no repercussions. On July 9, 2020, a neighbor of Che's called the police because he heard a woman screaming for help. At that time, Che had pinned Angel to the ground and hit her head against the floor. Although Angel needed medical help afterward, she did not report the incident. In the following months, she continued to experience psychological and physical abuse from Che. Fearful of what Che might do to her or her family, she remained silent about the situation and tried to endure it, even though she realized it couldn't last forever. In September of that year, Angel made the difficult decision to end her relationship for good. Che reacted strongly, physically attacking her, leaving her with scrapes and significant bruises on her face. After the incident, he appeared to calm down, even apologized, vowing to be more respectful in the future. However, Angel believed he wouldn't genuinely change and pushed to end the relationship entirely. She felt certain that the toughest and most dangerous challenges were still ahead, but she was prepared to face them. Che, after making several attempts to win Angel back, proposed that they should at least stay friends. Angel agreed, thinking that if he believed they were still on good terms, he might lose interest in her, stop pursuing her. On September 17, 2020, Angel went to work, later committed to picking up Che and his friend Rocco Sansom in their van. They frequently relied on her as their driver, especially when they were too drunk or under the influence of substances to drive themselves. That day was no exception. Angel arrived at the designated parking lot, where the van was parked. Che and Rocco were waiting. Once everyone was inside the van, they drove off. Angel and Che had a heated argument while driving. She pulled over, stopped the vehicle, and jumped out, running away quickly. This incident was recorded by street surveillance cameras. In the footage, Che can be seen angrily chasing after her. He catches her and forces her back into the van before taking the driver's seat himself. The vehicle then sped away, completely disregarding traffic laws. This situation amounted to a kidnapping, as Angel was trapped inside the van with two men. She was clearly terrified. It's unclear what she experienced during that time. In the next 15 minutes, the police received numerous reports about a suspicious van speeding away from town, with the driver behaving erratically. However, officers couldn't respond in time before a tragic event occurred. Suddenly, the passenger door of the van flew open, and Angel fell out at high speed, narrowly avoiding being struck by two cars following closely behind. Fortunately, the drivers reacted quickly and stopped their vehicles. They rushed to her aid. Someone called the police. Meanwhile, the van continued for about 100 kilometers per hour as if nothing had happened, then slowed down and returned to the scene. To any onlookers, it might have appeared that the driver had simply dropped something small and returned to retrieve it. Che approached the gathering calmly, told those present that the injured young woman was his girlfriend, that they had just argued. He said he wanted to break up with her and that she had lost control, attempting to jump out of the moving van. However, his account seemed unconvincing. He stayed on the scene, waited for the medics and police to arrive, repeating his story verbatim. It was evident that he believed Angel wouldn't survive. He seemed to be shifting all the blame onto her. His friend Rocco, who was also in the van, supported his version of events, mirroring his words. Despite her severe injuries, Angel was still breathing when she was rushed to the nearest hospital by ambulance. Unfortunately, the chances of saving her were low. She had broken ribs, broken limbs, a compression fracture in her spine, and many cuts, bruises. The most critical injury was a traumatic brain injury that led to significant bleeding in her brain. For several days, doctors fought tirelessly to save her life. She underwent multiple complex surgeries, including one to remove part of her skull to relieve pressure on her brain. Her heart stopped several times, and she was clinically dead on those occasions, but the medical team was able to revive her each time. Eventually, Angel was placed in a medically induced coma and put on life support. Her chances of waking up were nearly non-existent. The doctors were astonished that she had survived the initial accident, but their outlook was bleak. They warned the Lynn family that, even if she miraculously survived and could breathe independently, she would likely remain bedridden and in a permanent vegetative state. They suggested considering the option of disconnecting her from the costly life support machines, but her parents refused to even think about it. Che and Rocco were held at the scene and taken to the police station for questioning. They both insisted they had done nothing wrong, claiming that Angel was out of control and that the incident stemmed from her attempts to take her own life. However, security camera footage showed a different reality. Che was charged with kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, causing serious physical harm. Rocco was arrested as an accomplice. Both remained in jail while waiting for their court appearances. The trial started in January 2022, with new charges of assault and harassment added. The defendants did not admit guilt. The prosecutors failed to provide clear evidence that Angel was intentionally thrown from the moving van. As a result, the jury could not come to a unanimous verdict, leading to the defendants receiving relatively light sentences. Rocco was sentenced to just 21 months in prison for his involvement, while Che received a 7-year sentence. The Attorney General referred Che Bauskil's sentence to the Court of Appeal under the lenient sentences scheme. In March 2022, the court increased his sentence to 12 years. However, Che will still be eligible for parole after serving 8 years. Despite the doctor's discouraging predictions, Angel continued to fight for her life. Although she suffered significant brain damage, she eventually began to breathe on her own. After a few months, the doctors lifted her from the medically induced coma. Initially, she did not recognize anyone, could not control her movements, and needed to be fed through a tube. There were no indications that she was aware of her surroundings. Meanwhile, Angel's cousin, Farron Davis, has set up a GoFundMe page to help her recover from the horrific incident. Kind strangers and members of her community have donated nearly £200,000, which will be used to renovate the family home, as they have received no assistance from the council. Angel is now doing well and will soon be able to move out of the flat and live with her family once the construction work is complete. Her sister, Rhiannon, is planning to move nearby from Newcastle so she can join her mother in looking after her. In the spring of 2022, her parents brought her home to care for her themselves. A year later, in May 2023, Angel amazed everyone by starting to respond to her environment. Just a month after that, she looked at her mom, Nikki, and called out, "Mom." Now, Angel Lynn is going through a lengthy rehabilitation process, has even begun to take her first steps. Although the doctors are skeptical about her returning to her previous life, her parents refuse to accept that possibility because their daughter has shown time and again that she is a fighter. The story of Meredith Lynn Sullivan Chapman, 33, captured national attention and was one of the most talked about cases of 2018. Born on January 31, 1985, in Newark, Delaware. Meredith was the youngest of 3 children in the Sullivan family. She was raised in a loving environment, supported by her older brother, Thomas, and sister, Jessica, cherished her. The Sullivan family was financially stable, and her parents ensured that their children received an excellent education while also encouraging them to pursue their personal interests and talents. However, everything changed for Meredith when she was in middle school, as her parents decided to divorce. Fortunately, the separation was friendly, with no significant arguments or legal battles, and both parents continued to be actively involved in their children's lives. Although Meredith found the divorce emotionally challenging, she always felt cared for and loved. Meredith was a kind, outgoing person who easily made friends. Her cheerful and engaging personality made her popular among her peers. From a young age, she excelled in school. Learning came easily to her. She was curious, quick to grasp new concepts, and always willing to take the lead. In addition to her academic success, she had a strong passion for painting and was also very active in sports. During high school, she focused on cheerleading, eventually became the team captain. Even as a teenager, Meredith displayed determination and confidence, working hard to achieve her goals. Despite her drive, she treated others with fairness and respect, earning the admiration of both her classmates and teachers. After graduating from high school, Meredith began her studies at the University of Delaware, focusing on corporate communications and social sciences. She quickly adjusted to college life, excelled academically, and received a merit-based scholarship. Meredith stayed active in cheerleading, even giving presentations on it. Additionally, she participated in tennis, dance, and theater productions at the university. In her junior year, she secured an internship at a radio station in Philadelphia, where she managed the station's social media. This experience aligned perfectly with her career goals and deepened her passion for communications. Meredith joined an elite student organization, taking on a significant role that helped her build connections for her future career. For her senior project, she created a documentary about Joe Biden, which received notable recognition, including a nomination for a regional Emmy Award. This success opened opportunities for her in the media and communications field. After graduating with a bachelor's degree in 2007, Meredith worked on Capitol Hill as communications manager for U.S. Congressman Mike Castle and ran a winning campaign for former Delaware State Treasurer Chip Flowers. Her ambition and strong work ethic enabled her to excel in fast-paced environments, and she consistently pursued opportunities for intellectual growth. While in college, Meredith met a slightly older young man named Luke Chapman, who was also a graduate of the University of Delaware. They quickly formed a connection and began dating. Meredith and Luke shared many similarities. Both were intelligent, ambitious, and highly motivated. Luke, like Meredith, aimed for a career in public service, eventually became a member of the New York City Council. For a period, their professional journeys aligned. They both achieved significant accomplishments in their fields. Meredith and Luke had a good income and, shortly after their wedding, bought a large home in a quiet and upscale neighborhood in Fairfield Crest. They chose to delay starting a family to concentrate on their careers in politics. They also adopted a golden retriever named Indy, whom they cared for with the same dedication that others might show to a child. After several years, Meredith changed her career significantly. She left the field of politics to pursue a career in education. She obtained a master's degree in education and returned to the University of Delaware, her former school, where she began teaching public relations and digital marketing courses. She created strategies for social media engagement and researched new communication methods. In addition to teaching, she participated in various university committees. In 2013, Meredith took on the role of marketing director while still lecturing and publishing academic work. Her colleagues and students held her in high regard, praising her intelligence, professionalism, and unwavering dedication. Luke's career was progressing well. He dedicated long hours to work and took his responsibilities seriously. Over time, he and Meredith became deeply focused on their personal ambitions, resulting in them being home together less and less often. As a result, a noticeable distance formed between them. Although they appeared to have a perfect relationship on the outside, the connection between them had faded. Conversations about starting a family had stopped, and their marriage felt more like a formality than a true partnership. However, neither of them rushed to end the relationship, as their living arrangement was functioning adequately. They cohabited more like roommates than spouses, managing their own finances and daily routines separately. There were no fights or confrontations. In public, they projected an image of happiness. No one in their social circle knew what was really happening behind closed doors. In 2016, Meredith chose to re-enter politics, this time as a candidate rather than an assistant or staff member. Driven and ambitious, she launched her campaign to challenge the current senator for Delaware's 8th District, David Sokolow. Her campaign gained momentum, and she had a good chance of winning. Ultimately, she lost by a narrow margin of less than 5%. After the election, Meredith returned to her career in education and focused on advancing her academic work. By 2017, she decided to hire an assistant, specifically a creative director, to oversee marketing efforts. She posted the job online and received numerous applications. Meredith personally interviewed each candidate, but one, a 49-year-old named Mark Gerardo, particularly impressed her. He met all the qualifications for the role in terms of experience and skills. During the interview, he made a positive impression and agreed to start working immediately. At that time, Mark was living in North Carolina but was ready to move for the position. He had been married to Jennifer Gerardo, but she stayed behind initially to sell their home and finish other obligations before relocating to join him. Mark proved to be a thoughtful, intelligent, and well-educated person with a strong background in marketing. He exceeded expectations right from the start. He quickly built a good working relationship with his new supervisor, and they found common interests almost immediately. Mark was 16 years older than his young boss. At that time, Meredith had grown emotionally distant from the husband she had been with for nearly 10 years, as both were heavily focused on their careers. Mark's situation was more complex. He had been married for almost 25 years and had remained committed to his wife during that time. As co-workers, they developed a close bond. Their teamwork was seamless, and they had a silent understanding of each other. Mark was dependable, efficient, and skilled. However, beneath their professional connection, a deeper relationship was beginning to form, unnoticed by others. For Meredith, Mark became more than just a trusted colleague. She felt comfortable sharing her personal thoughts and feelings with him, which meant a lot to her. In her busy pursuit of success, she had little time for friends, family, or meaningful conversations. Even her husband felt more like a stranger than a partner. But with Mark, she felt calm, safe, and truly understood. She eventually stopped resisting and invited him to spend time together outside of work. Just 2 weeks after Mark moved to Newark, Meredith suggested they meet after work at a local bar to relax. She wanted to have a conversation in a more casual setting. That evening, Mark opened up to her and, for the first time, shared his story. Mark Gerardo was born in 1968. His parents were strict and deeply religious, enforcing high standards of obedience and discipline in their large family. From an early age, Mark understood the importance of hard work and performed well in school. When Mark was 18, he met Jennifer, who was 16 and working as a waitress at a fast food restaurant. He often visited the restaurant, captivated by the girl behind the counter, but he never mustered the courage to talk to her or share his feelings. Jennifer and her family eventually moved to a nearby town, causing her to lose touch with Mark for several years. In 1990, They met again at a local shopping center where Jen Eyre worked as a sales associate. Mark was excited to see her but felt too shy to make a move. Noticing this, Jen Eyre took the initiative and asked him out first. Their relationship quickly grew deeper, and in 1992, Mark proposed. Jen Eyre happily accepted, and less than a year later, they got married. Mark and Jen Eyre, newly married, settled in Indianapolis, Indiana, where they purchased a home together. At this point, Mark had completed his degree in graphic design and landed a well-paying job in that field. Jen Eyre was successful as a real estate agent, so they enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle. Although they never had children, they adopted 3 dogs that they treated as part of their family. To their friends, neighbors, and relatives, Mark and Jen Eyre appeared to be a perfect couple, deeply in love and genuinely happy. They rarely had public disagreements. Their home was known for its peaceful atmosphere. Both were strong, independent individuals with stable incomes and lives. By the mid-2000s, after being together for over 20 years, the Gerardos faced difficulties. Mark experienced the loss of both his parents in a short time, while Jen Eyre, who had put a lot of effort into starting her own business, encountered significant financial troubles. Overwhelmed by emotional and financial stress, they decided to make a big change in their lives. They sold their house and moved to the peaceful town of Greenville, South Carolina. Mark quickly secured a stable job in marketing, while Jen Eyre opted to focus on family life as she looked for the right job opportunity. During this time, they traveled a lot and spent quality time together. The emotional distance that had developed between them began to disappear. Their relationship rekindled, and for a year and a half, they experienced what felt like a second honeymoon. In 2017, Mark started looking for new job opportunities to find a more fulfilling role with better pay. During his search, he found a job posting from Meredith. The couple was not afraid of the move. Mark went ahead first because the job needed him to start right away, while Jen Eyre stayed behind to sell their house and take care of local affairs. She planned to join him in Newark about a month later. That evening, Mark shared his story with Meredith, who listened carefully. In return, she talked about her own life, including her career successes and the slow deterioration of her marriage. As they talked, they connected on a deeper level, feeling as if they had known each other for years. They built a strong sense of trust and stayed at the bar until late at night. Afterward, they went back to Mark's apartment and spent the night together. This marked the beginning of a private relationship that they kept hidden from others. They continued to see each other secretly, often meeting at Mark's place while his wife was out of state. For Meredith, starting a romance with Mark didn't pose any real challenges. Her marriage to Luke had long become a mere formality. For Mark, the situation was much more complicated. First, he had never cheated in his 25 years of marriage. Second, he found himself unexpectedly attracted to Meredith, who was much younger than him. Third, he knew that Meredith was still legally married, just like he was. Despite these issues, Mark and Meredith's relationship continued even after Jen Eyre moved to Newark. From the beginning, Jen Eyre felt that something was off. She sensed that another woman had been in their new home, but she chose not to confront her husband right away. Instead, she decided to gather information to confirm her suspicions. Mark often worked late and became more distant from his family. When Jen Eyre asked him about it, he attributed his behavior to tiredness and a heavy workload. Their physical closeness had almost vanished. This continued for several months until Jen Eyre confronted him about the possibility of infidelity. Mark denied it. Although he attempted to end his affair with Meredith, their bond was too strong, and after a short break, they resumed their secret meetings. Meredith had made a decision. After discussing it with her husband, Luke, they agreed to proceed with a peaceful divorce. On February 14, 2018, Valentine's Day, Jen Eyre confronted Mark. She revealed that she was aware of his affair with his boss. She had hired a private investigator who followed Mark, took compromising photos, and recorded the locations where he met Meredith. With this evidence, Mark had no escape. However, he tried to justify his actions, assuring Jen Eyre that he would end the affair to save their marriage. Unfortunately, this promise was short-lived, as he continued his relationship with Meredith, but now with more caution. Jen Eyre didn't trust Mark, so she decided to keep a close watch on him. She placed a GPS device in his car and installed monitoring software on his phone and computer. She sewed listening devices into Mark's clothes to secretly record his conversations when they were apart. One of those recordings captured Jen Eyre's growing insecurity. The situation escalated when Mark discovered the tracking device. Realizing he could no longer put off an important decision, he told Jen Eyre that he had fallen in love with Meredith, his boss, and wanted to be with her. He also announced his plans to file for divorce. This news was a severe shock for Jen Eyre, who was 47 at the time. After nearly 25 years of marriage, her husband was leaving her for a younger woman. To make things worse, they had recently moved to a new city, and Jen Eyre had not yet found a job. This left her feeling financially unstable, emotionally unsupported, and lost. Her life felt like it was falling apart, and she was struggling to cope. By early March 2018, Meredith completed her divorce from Luke and was no longer tied to any commitments. She anticipated that Mark would also finalize his divorce soon, but his situation was more complicated. Due to specific legal requirements in their new state, Mark needed to establish residency before he could file for divorce, and they had only recently moved. At the same time, Meredith resigned from her job at the University of Delaware. She was about to start a new role as Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer at Villanova University, one of Pennsylvania's top institutions. Additionally, she received an offer for a leadership position at Ruffalo Noel Levitz, a prominent consulting firm specializing in higher education strategy. On April 5th, Meredith moved into her new home in Radnor Township, Pennsylvania. She was gradually getting settled, and about a week later, Mark joined her. He had also left his previous job and started a new role at Villanova University as Meredith's personal assistant. It felt like a fresh start for the couple, a promising new chapter. They just needed to complete a few final steps to fully embrace this new beginning, but they were unaware that a deadly threat was already approaching. Hurt and betrayed, Jen Eyre began plotting a disturbing act of revenge. On April 23, 2018, Mark and Meredith had plans to meet at a local restaurant to celebrate a fresh start. Before heading to the restaurant, Meredith stopped by her house to change clothes while Mark ordered their meal and waited for her. As time went by, Meredith didn't arrive, and she wasn't answering her phone, making Mark uneasy. Suddenly, he received a series of alarming messages from Jen Eyre, filled with anger and resentment. She wished him endless misery, and then he received a photo that shocked him. It was a picture of Meredith's kitchen. In a panic, Mark abandoned everything and rushed to Meredith's house. When he arrived, he saw her car parked in the driveway. A black Chevrolet was also parked down the street, but Mark didn't pay much attention to it at the time. The lights were on inside the house, and the front door was unlocked. However, as soon as he stepped inside, he was met with silence. He went directly to the kitchen, was horrified to find Meredith, 33, and Jen Eyre, 48, lying on the floor in large pools of blood. It was too late for them, both died from gunshot wounds. Mark screamed and rushed outside. His cries alarmed the nearby neighbors, who quickly called for emergency services. Initially, investigators thought Mark might have been involved in the incident due to his emotional struggles and complicated relationship with Jen Eyre. However, this theory was quickly dismissed. The weapon was discovered under Jen Eyre's body and contained only her fingerprints. Authorities concluded that the act was premeditated, followed by her own self-harm. Before the incident, Jen Eyre had sent several emails to a close friend expressing her intentions to do something drastic. Later evidence showed she had spent around 2 weeks preparing for this. She bought a firearm, rented a car, and collected items for a disguise. Jen Eyre also managed to find Meredith's new address on her own. For an entire week, she observed the couple's activities. Neighbors reported seeing a woman in a wig driving a black Chevrolet and lingering in the area, but she did not seem threatening. Mark also remembered noticing the car but thought it belonged to someone from the neighborhood. Jen Eyre had closely observed Meredith's routine and was aware of when they typically returned home. On the day of the incident, she arrived early, parked her car a few blocks away, and approached their house. She gained entry by breaking a window in the backyard and quietly entered. It is believed her intention was to confront, kill both Mark and Meredith before taking her own life. However, things did not go as planned. Meredith came home alone. Investigators later discovered that Meredith had taken out a life insurance policy valued at $500,000 about a year and a half prior, naming her ex-husband, Luke, as the beneficiary. After the divorce, this designation had not been changed. As a result, Luke Chapman became a person of interest as authorities looked into possible indirect involvement in the case. However, this theory was ultimately ruled out due to insufficient evidence. The investigation took only a few days, and authorities quickly closed the case, concluding that the responsible person was deceased, that there were no other suspects. Mark was exonerated but faced significant public and media scrutiny. Rather than withdrawing, he decided to speak out, giving interviews and appearing on talk shows to discuss the events in detail. A year later, Mark released a memoir detailing his relationships with both women and the circumstances surrounding the tragic incident. He expressed how deeply the experience affected him, noting that he never expected the woman he had been with for nearly 25 years could do something so devastating. While the book became a bestseller and was generally well received, public opinion was mixed. Some critics accused him of exploiting the situation and profiting from the tragedy by sharing his personal story. Meredith's family sued Luke after he refused to return the life insurance money he received after her death. The court ruled in his favor, ordering him to return only 10% of the total amount to her family, as the judge found no malicious intent on his part. Meredith had not expected to die and had not updated her policy before her passing. After she died, her remains were cremated, and her urn was given to her parents. Jennifer Gerardo was buried in her hometown of Fort Wayne, Indiana. Many still believe that Mark was also meant to be a victim that night but narrowly escaped a tragic fate. Marilena Rosari was a 58-year-old woman living with her husband in Castellanza, Italy. They had 2 grown daughters who lived on their own and had children of their own, making Marilena a grandmother. She worked as a promoter in supermarkets located in the province of Varese. By 2017, she viewed herself as a successful individual, enjoying a peaceful life while taking care of her family. On Sunday, July 30, 2017, Marilena and her husband visited a mutual friend's house for dinner in a nearby town. They spent a few hours there before returning home together to Castellanza. It was a typical quiet evening for them. However, once they arrived home, her husband had other plans. He planned to visit his elderly mother in the nearby town, as she was unwell and needed help with housework. He was absent all evening and night, returning home the next morning around 10:30 a.m. He expected to find his wife at home since she usually left for work later. Typically, at that time, she would be enjoying her morning routine, having breakfast, getting ready, and occasionally doing some cleaning. To his surprise, Marilena was missing. Initially, her husband thought she might have gone to work earlier than usual, possibly due to a last-minute request. However, Marilena always communicated any changes to her schedule and would not just disappear without notice. Moreover, that morning, she had planned to spend time with him to discuss their future plans and some important matters. He started to feel anxious and tried to reach Marilena. After several unsuccessful attempts to call her mobile phone, he noticed it was turned off, which was unusual for her as she was always reachable during work hours. When he checked the house, he discovered more worrying signs. Her bag containing personal items and documents was missing, but her car was parked in the yard. This was strange since she never left without her car. Concerned, he went outside to look around the neighborhood. He talked to several neighbors who were awake and working in their gardens, but none of them had seen or heard anything unusual. He also called his daughters, but they had not heard from their mother either. Marilena's phone still remained off. Feeling restless, he decided to contact the police. However, they informed him that they could not file a missing person report until 24 hours had passed. It was not until July 31st, when he returned to the police station, that his report was finally accepted and the search began. During this time, he couldn't get in touch with Marilena. He reached out to everyone who knew her, including her daughters, relatives, and colleagues, but no one had seen her. By the time the police acknowledged the report of her disappearance, the management and staff at the supermarkets were already worried because she hadn't shown up for work in 2 days. Marilena was known for her punctuality and reliability. She never missed a shift, so her absence raised great concern. The police interviewed all of Marilena's co-workers. They were shocked by her disappearance and found no indications that anything was wrong. No one was aware of any issues she might have been dealing with, nor did it seem like she had plans for a long trip or any reason to leave unexpectedly. The last person to see and talk to Marilena was her husband, making him the first person law enforcement wanted to question. Detectives interviewed him multiple times to understand what happened before her disappearance. They aimed to find out if the couple had any issues that might have led Marilena to leave or if anyone harbored ill will toward her. Her husband found these suggestions ridiculous and dismissed them, stating that their family had never been involved in crime or shady activities, and they did not have any enemies. Detectives interviewed Marilena's friends and found that they had no useful information. Her husband mentioned one concerning detail: the family was facing financial troubles, owing €10,000 to the bank. However, this lead seemed unhelpful since they were consistently making payments on the loan. He also provided documentation proving that both he and Marilena were fulfilling their financial obligations without issues. The police explored various possibilities, ranging from a voluntary disappearance to a potential crime, but after several days, they had no concrete answers. Meanwhile, Marilena had not used her phone or bank cards, raising concerns about her well-being, as it's difficult for anyone to survive long without money, a phone, or a car. A press conference was held to gather more information about Marilena's disappearance, and a television appeal was broadcasted to raise awareness. The prosecutor's office requested a detailed description of the missing woman, which was shared on all channels along with a call for eyewitnesses to come forward. Unfortunately, this effort did not lead to any new information. To assist with the search, specially trained dogs were brought in. The dogs were taken around the house and the area by the gate, but they remained calm and did not indicate any scent. The courtyard and Marilena's car were also searched without any success. Additionally, Marilena's relatives appeared on television, made several public statements, and directly reached out to her in hopes of getting a response. Days went by, but Marilena was still missing. The critical timeframe for finding her alive had passed, and anxiety deepened as troubling thoughts arose. Her husband and daughters felt increasingly worried. Law enforcement still issued a nationwide appeal through various media to widen the search efforts. Meanwhile, relatives created and distributed flyers featuring Marilena's photo throughout the city. A week later, the police had almost lost hope of finding her alive and shifted their focus to the surrounding area, trying to identify anyone who might have been involved in her possible murder or kidnapping. Naturally, close relatives, especially her husband, became suspects. He was the last known person to have spent time with her. He claimed he was at his mother's house during the time she went missing, which raised suspicions. After appearing on television, he acted cautiously, seemingly avoiding drawing attention to himself. He explained this behavior by saying he wanted to evade media scrutiny, but law enforcement grew suspicious that there might be a more concerning reason behind his actions. Consequently, they began to investigate him more thoroughly. Detectives confirmed that the evening after her husband brought her home, he went to help his sick mother with housework. Neighbors saw them arrive together, and several witnesses confirmed that he left almost immediately afterward. He was not seen again until the next morning. Neighbors near his mother's house also supported his story, stating he arrived late in the evening, and the timing matched perfectly. CCTV cameras along the road recorded his car traveling to and from his mother's house at the times he mentioned. His alibi appeared solid and did not raise any suspicions. However, investigators were not quick to remove him from the list of suspects, as close acquaintances are often implicated in such cases. Therefore, they returned to that neighborhood hoping to gather more information from former neighbors. Local residents were interviewed, and detectives meticulously investigated Marilena's previous social circle to find any suspicious individuals who might have had an interest in the kidnapping or potential violent actions. At this stage, her husband appeared to be an unlikely suspect for several reasons. He and his wife were widely regarded as loving partners with minimal disagreements. He had no financial incentive to cause her harm, and he had a solid alibi. Meanwhile, the investigation continued to progress as new leads surfaced. After speaking with the couple's acquaintances at their former residence, the Carabinieri shifted their focus to Vito Clerico, a 64-year-old man who was well acquainted with Marilena and her husband, lived nearby. From the outset, Vito displayed a cautious demeanor and seemed anxious. During questioning, he changed his story multiple times, which raised significant suspicions. The investigation team focused on Marilena's neighbor to gather more information. Background checks revealed that he had no criminal record, and his relationship with Marilena did not initially cause any concerns. A mutual friend mentioned that they met at work when Marilena was a promoter at shopping centers. This was Vito working as a storekeeper at Marilena's workplace. Their jobs frequently brought them together, leading to regular communication. The friend described Vito as irresponsible, noting that he had a history of borrowing large amounts of money from others and either not repaying it or repaying it late. There were also rumors that Marilena had lent him money during their time together, which could suggest a possible motive for the crime. As a result, he was called in for questioning. During the interview at the station, Vito described receiving a call from Marilena on the night she disappeared. She asked to meet him at the station in Garbagnac Milanese, explaining that her husband was visiting his sick mother and could not assist her. She mentioned having important business in the city. Vito, being friends with her, agreed to meet, but Marilena never showed up. Initially, he thought she changed her mind and went home. However, several aspects of his story seemed suspicious. First, the timing was too late for any business dealings. Second, the timeline Vito provided did not align with the information the police had confirmed. According to the timeline, Marilena should have been preparing to go to the station while she was with her friends, but no one confirmed that she had any plans to go anywhere or contacted anyone. Additionally, since her husband was nearby, she could have asked him for help. All of this seemed illogical. Due to these inconsistencies, detectives decided to investigate Vito's account further. They discovered that his mobile phone was never registered on the route he claimed to have taken. Furthermore, he was not seen on any surveillance cameras, including those at the station. If Vito was telling the truth, he should have appeared on video. The most intriguing discovery was that the detectives found a woman in the recordings who looked like Marilena. This indicated that she had indeed visited Garbagnac Milanese, from which she never returned. Upon examining Vito's mobile phone, the detectives confirmed that he had received several calls in the days leading up to her disappearance. Marilena had repeatedly tried to contact him, but he had consistently ignored her. However, on the night she disappeared, there was no call from her to him. Instead, there was a single outgoing call from Vito to her number on the evening of July 30th, 2017. This evidence directly contradicted his account of events. During the conversation, one of the detectives spotted dark red stains on Vito's trousers that looked like blood. Vito quickly claimed that he raised rabbits and that the stains might have come from butchering one of them, as he owned around 40 rabbits. However, the police doubted his story, confiscated the trousers, and sent them to a lab for testing. The analysis confirmed that the stains were human blood, specifically matching that of Marilena. Vito was unable to explain this finding. On September 11, 2017, he was arrested, 40 days after Marilena had disappeared. He was charged with murder and concealing her body. During interrogations, Vito provided confusing and inconsistent accounts that varied from day to day, filled with odd details, but he did not provide any clear confessions or truth. Eventually, he was worn down and agreed to tell investigators where Marilena's body, while still denying that he was the murderer. He claimed he helped the real killer hide her body out of fear for himself and his wife. Vito was compelled to assist in disposing of a body, and he kept the identity of Marilena's killer a secret. On September 12, authorities began excavating his backyard, specifically in a small garden in Garbagnac Milanese. At the exact spot Vito indicated, they found a shallow grave approximately 40 centimeters deep. Inside, they discovered a decapitated body wrapped in multiple layers of polyethylene and placed in a bag, which was partially covered in concrete. The advanced decomposition of the remains and the missing head complicated the identification process. Although the clothing resembled Marilena's, there were no identifying features, like tattoos, scars, or fractures, to confirm her identity. As a result, identification needed to be made using dental records. In the meantime, police continued to search for the missing head. Vito, for unknown reasons, refused to cooperate with law enforcement. His behavior was quite unusual, leading them to suspect he might be feigning mental disorders to claim insanity during the trial and evade punishment for the murder. It was revealed that he had been diagnosed with minor mental health issues in the past and had taken medication, but he had recently stopped. Eventually, under pressure from detectives, Vito started talking again. He claimed that he not only helped hide Marilena's body but also beheaded her after the murder. He said a certain killer had ordered him to do this. The decapitation was a deliberate act to make identification more difficult. Vito stated that he had thrown the head in a dumpster. Given how much time had passed, it was likely that the head had already been taken to a dump outside the city, making it nearly impossible to find. However, the authorities were skeptical. Every claim he made needed to be verified. While interrogating Vito, the police also spoke with his family members. One of them mentioned that Vito owned several plots of land. He recalled seeing Vito heading toward one of the most remote plots the day after Marilena's disappearance. This plot was an abandoned field located between Garbagnac Milanese and the town where Marilena lived. The suspect owned property there but typically did not visit without a valid reason. The family members speculated that Vito might have gone to this isolated area to dispose of Marilena's head. Before beginning their search for the head, the police rechecked Vito's mobile phone. This allowed them to confirm that he had indeed traveled to that location, helping to narrow down the search area. A large search team was organized, which included specially trained dogs. The task was made more difficult by the thick growth of blackberries in most of the area. The team thoroughly searched the abandoned field. A few hundred meters from the road, they found a bag hidden in the bushes. It was the same bag that Marilena usually took with her for errands and shopping. Inside the bag was Marilena's head. On September 26th, the body was finally confirmed to be that of Marilena Ree, a 58-year-old woman who had been missing. However, one question still lingered: what was the motive behind her murder? It is believed that it was likely connected to financial issues. Investigators discovered that in 2014, Marilena had loaned Vito and his wife a significant amount of money, approximately 80,000 euros, from her savings. Vito had persuaded a mutual acquaintance that he and his wife were struggling with the bank due to overdue loans and were at risk of losing their home. Trusting his word, Marilena lent him the money, believing he was honest. In the following years, Vito repeatedly delayed paying back the debt, relying on Marilena's patience and her lack of urgent financial needs. However, Marilena eventually needed the money and requested a quick repayment. When Vito failed to return the funds, she had to take out a bank loan, planning to pay it off as soon as she received her repayment from Vito. Despite her growing insistence on getting her money back, Vito still did not repay the debt. On that significant evening, after her husband went to visit his mother, Marilena likely chose to confront Vito about the money. It is unclear how she ended up in the nearby city. During their discussion, Vito refused to return the money, which prompted a violent reaction from Marilena. This led to a conflict that escalated into a fight. A forensic expert noted that before Marilena was beheaded, she was hit on the head with a blunt object at least 6 times. The specifics are hard to determine due to multiple fractures in her skull and facial bones. Additionally, the remains had deteriorated significantly, complicating the examination further. After the murder, Vito cut off his victim's head, buried the body in a shallow grave near his house, wrapped it in several layers of plastic, and partially covered it with concrete. He had only a small amount of building materials, which was insufficient to fully hide the burial site. He placed the head inside her bag, took it out of town, and threw it deep into the thorny bushes on his remote property, hoping it would never be discovered. Even though the reconstruction of the events was supported by various pieces of evidence, Vito did not confess to the crime. Searches of his house and car found traces of blood and indirect evidence suggesting that he was not alone in committing the crime. Unfortunately, not all details could be uncovered. Vito completely denied any involvement of his wife or anyone else, claiming that a third party was responsible but refusing to identify them. After several interrogations, he ultimately took the blame for the crime. Vito's defense attorney claimed that his confession was coerced, noting that he had been questioned at least 10 times and believed his rights were violated. Initially, he only admitted to hiding the remains but did not confess to murder. However, he later claimed to have killed Marilena. Eventually, his story changed again, and he denied everything. The lawyer suggested that someone else must have committed the crime, indicating the possible involvement of a third party. However, this theory could not be supported by witnesses or the evidence gathered. Without any solid leads on the identity of this mysterious person, the idea was dismissed. All of Vito's inconsistent statements, which raised suspicions among investigators, were attributed to an effort to protect his wife. The next step focused on Vito's mental state. Psychiatric evaluations were performed, which found no significant issues. The prosecution claimed that the concealed body, beheading, and the discarded bag far from the city pointed to premeditated murder, a well-planned crime. It was clear that the defendant had intentionally lured the victim into a trap. However, despite the strong arguments and evidence, Vito cleverly kept altering his story, apparently aiming to confuse the investigation. In a desperate attempt to defend himself, Vito tried to argue that the prosecution was biased against him. His lawyer suggested this was to make him a scapegoat and resolve the case quickly. The accused also mentioned having amnesia, which he said prevented him from remembering the days surrounding Marilena's murder. He ultimately confessed to hearing voices of demons that had tormented him for years, leading him to kill Marilena. However, these claims were disproven through investigations, and multiple witnesses stated they had never seen him exhibit signs of mental illness. Throughout the investigation, Vito remained calm and did not show signs of significant stress, which is uncommon for someone with mental health issues. The only medical condition identified in him was epilepsy, but he experienced seizures very rarely. Even if they happened more frequently, aggressive behavior is not typical for those with epilepsy. Detectives were intrigued by Vito's desperate attempts to shift the focus away from his wife. From the start, she appeared to be a potential accomplice in the murder. Investigators viewed her as more dominant and assertive than Vito, leading them to suspect she might have been the mastermind behind the crime. As they dug deeper, they uncovered more compelling information. Marilena was not the only woman deceived by Vito. He frequently borrowed large amounts of money from relatives, friends, and colleagues, ranging from 30,000 to 100,000 euros, to finance the construction of his house. This project became an obsession for both Vito and his wife, who had long dreamed of building a grand villa. To achieve their goal, they took on significant debts and loans, often borrowing again just to make payments and delay the associated issues of non-payment. By the time Marilena was murdered, they were under immense pressure from creditors. It is likely that everyone who lent them money was in danger, just as Marilena was. Due to the extensive examinations needed for a thorough investigation of the deceased's body, the burial did not take place until 10 months after the body was found. The funeral was held on June 1, 2018. By the end of January 2019, the trial of Vito began. From the start, his inconsistent statements, confessions, and retractions created a sense of distrust. The defense attorney struggled to effectively counter the prosecution's arguments, achieving only limited success in reducing the charges. Initially, it was thought that the murder involved torture, but a forensic expert later confirmed that the severed head and some of the body mutilations occurred after death. On January 24, 2019, Vito, who is 66 years old, was sentenced to life imprisonment. He appealed the verdict, but his appeal was rejected. Investigations into his wife's possible involvement in Marilena's death are still ongoing. On November 21, 2017, Vito was attacked in prison by his cellmate. His cellmate used a metal plate and a makeshift weapon during the assault. Vito reported that he had tried to stop all communication with his cellmate, who had made clear abuse advances that escalated into harassment. When Vito threatened to report his cellmate's behavior, he was attacked. While in prison, Vito continually expressed his dissatisfaction with the justice system, insisting on his innocence and asking for safety from his hostile cellmate. Despite his requests, he was sent back to prison after receiving treatment. On Sunday, November 29, 2020, he was found dead in the prison toilet. In his hand was a note that powerfully criticized the Italian law enforcement. He died after swallowing a garbage bag, which obstructed his airway and led to suffocation. Many suspect that he did not take his own life and that the incident was planned by his cellmate.